One of you is going to follow God as a priest or a nun. For Father Dewey Lay, that prediction, made at his confirmation, became an ember that burned quietly in his heart for years. The newly ordained priest says if God is calling you to serve him, running away from him isn't an option. Kathy Harrington reports on the young priest's road to ordination.
I think the first questions that when I went into my room was basically what just happened.
Father Dewey Lay is describing his arrival at St. John's Seminary in Brighton in 2013.
I was the youngest when I came in that particular year.
Saying yes to God's call, Dewey Lay was on his way to becoming a priest, but this journey began more than 8,500 miles away.
I was born and baptized in Vietnam, and I came here when I was 12. I was turning 12 and I came here. And then I moved with my family to Amherst.
Born in the Central Highlands village of Kontum, Father Lay grew up surrounded by his cousins and within walking distance of his church. Arriving in the United States with his parents, 2 older sisters, a younger brother, aunts and uncles, and 10 cousins, the Newman Center in Amherst became their parish.
Confirmed here in this parish by Monsignor Yajo. I think it was during the homily or one of the reading that, it talks about being the priest of Christ and, you are being called to serve him. And I felt that was directed toward me. I think during the homily when Monsignor Yajo said, one of you is going to become, going to follow God, either become a priest or a nun. And we only had like 8 of us. And so I guess that felt really personal.
About that time, former vocations director Father Gary Daly arrived at the Newman Center and set up displays of vocations materials.
So I walked by and it's like, I look at, at the table and I grab, the DVD and the pamphlet and a few other stuff. And I go home and I put it in my drawers.
With both parents working on the UMass campus, the graduating high school seniors' choice for college seemed logical. But what to study? Father Lay tried engineering, ROTC, business, and psychology without finding his direction.
As I was going through my struggles in college, especially after my first year, as I find my peace here, I started to think more, not think, but it's the feeling of the attractiveness of going into the priesthood. And so as I go to Mass, I look at the priest on the altar and start to imagine myself up there, and then I started to laugh.
Laugh and move on. But Father Lay says the thoughts continued, and eventually he was going to daily Mass.
I started to think more of, I guess, that attractiveness. Maybe I should think about this more, and so I keep laughing at it. It's like, that's not for me. I don't like to study. It's like no one will understand me. It's like, there's the cultural difference and there's the language barrier and everything else that I just go, that was when I started to feel that, as being called, like, you should try it.
Digging out the long-buried DVD and pamphlets, he watched and read and checked out the website and still tried to convince himself he wasn't one of those guys. He considered talking to Father Gary, but his feet took him out the front door of the Newman Center instead.
Like a month or 2 later, it's like, this urging, it's like, okay, I need to go talk to him and ask him, about this.
And again, his feet took him straight out the door.
So the third time I was in church, and so that was when, it's when you feel this intense fear, but it's a warm fear. I don't know how to describe it. Like you're just sitting there and you get someone hit you in the head and you just shock, and then it's basically forces me to kneel down in front of the tabernacle, and so that's when I, it's the feeling of what are you doing? Why are you wasting time? And so I stood up and I walked down the hall and I turned to Father Gary's office, and he was sitting at his chair, and I just came in, sat down, and talked to him. So I told him, I you know, I told him, I don't know what to do. You know, like I had this feeling of God is calling me, you know, to be His instrument.
With that, all of the excuses and the feelings of unworthiness poured out of him. Father Daly explained that none of us is worthy to follow Christ, but then he extended an invitation.
And he asked me that day of, you know, am I willing to drop everything and go to Boston? And so that's how it all started.
So the boy who never left home asked to borrow the family car to interview for the priesthood and enter the seminary. Completing his bachelor's degree in philosophy, earning another in sacred theology, Father Lay also earned a master's degree in divinity. He offers these words of advice.
For young men who's coming in, my advice would be not to do it alone, because this discerning alone is very painful and very difficult.
He says it is the grace of God that moves you to follow him. Spending his last year in seminary assigned to Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament Church in Westfield, Father Lay learned about the pastoral needs of a parish. The parish family will have a chance to share in the joy of his ordination. First, though, Father Lay will celebrate Mass at the Newman Center. Then, a Mass in Vietnamese at St. Paul the Apostle Church in Springfield. And on June 8th, Father Lay returns to Westfield for a Mass of Thanksgiving and a dinner with the parish family that has come to love him. Days later, he travels with his parents to Vietnam to offer a Mass of Thanksgiving at his home parish in Kon Tum. For Real to Real, I'm Kathy Harrington.